everybody here that we've talked to is, either a fierce creative or in the process of considering a creative venture or entrepreneurial venture. And so I think the coming event is really timely for where people at, especially with the stuff that everybody's sharing. And me reflecting on that, so when I shared the problem of pain and the short excerpt, this was something that I think it's like the gatekeeper of true expression, because you never know how long it's going to take. You never know what type of pressure you're going to have to weather. And the biggest challenge isn't the creation itself. I mean, if you continue to try and face pushback of any kind, you evolve. We're built to evolve organically. The problem is whether we have the persistence to let it live outside of ourselves. And like the pain and shrinking effect that can happen when we don't take those actions is like an increasingly smaller existence and world. That I think that everybody should think about. I think about it all the time, and it worries me. And I think as just a general filter, it's important to ask, well, which version of myself am I leaning into here? I know the way that I want to operate and who I want to be. And what is the outcome of not one of these decisions, but if this becomes the norm over time? What does 1,000 of these decisions do? Who's the persona at the back end of that complex? That's a useful filter, I think. To recap where we kind of left things last time, talking about the warrior sage double dominance and then the shapeshifter asset double dominance. These two, where are we looking at so from your perspective, warrior sage up here, and then shapeshifter asset down here. The easiest way to look at these is if we draw a line between them, we can say that the ones on this side are obstacle or barrier creating, right? They enhance identity and internal coherence against an opposition. It's me versus the world. It's subject-object dichotomy. And then the other side of this is inclusive. I'm receiving more. There is no barrier, right? There is no shield between me and the world. And the risk of that is obvious. I take in too much, it destroys me. So we could look at those as personas or characters. But the truth is, if we don't have both, we don't have art, we don't have creation, we don't have personal expression. And so this is where the tension lies. And we practiced focus, we practiced structure, we practiced breathing. But I think at full firm, we left it at one crucible, which is that we left it in the domain of coherence and focus, which is structure, focus, breath. But the tension between focus and breath, we didn't really unpack, and it is a critical one to address both Joanna and Nate's insights. So I'll open this up to a super quick Q&A if people want to throw out just a word. Well, what's one word that would signify a low-grade warrior, and then one word that would signify a high-grade warrior, or low capacity versus high capacity, in terms of somatic expression or embodiment?
Structure.
Structure would be high grade, high capacity, versus... Do you guys remember when we first did our push hand experience and then we did minor adjustments?
Yeah.
And we took it out of the resistance and the tension that was in the body into a structural... We could say bracing, but bracing implies tension too. But this is that initial dichotomy. And so that's on a spectrum, and there might be a case where the warrior needs to express with tension and with structure, so it doesn't take that off the table. But both of these move toward like a coherent expression of self against the world. There's me, there's what I'm experiencing. I can weather that by resisting it, or I can weather it just by centering and composing myself. The difference between these, though, when it's felt, is profound. So we felt it in push hands, but can you activate it when you're in conversation, when you're under pressure? When you start to feel that ounce of triggering, can you retain the one and relinquish the other? Which brings us to the next one, which is the two sides of the sage. or let's say the two sides of the attention or consciousness spectrum, awareness versus focus. So we did a lot with focus. Focus is a regaining of center. Focus is bringing you back, but it also creates the filter, me versus you, right? We have that concentration factor that creates armoring. So the interesting thing that surfaces in the problem of pain is that if we want to metabolize it effectively, we need to bring in this structural element of the warrior. And we need to do it without bringing in the staunch or exclusive focus of the sage. And this is tricky, and it's a bodily shift. So we're going to practice it real quick, and then I'll call it in and just pause this a couple times over the hour just to practice it briefly. But so if we stay in the point of focus, we no longer allow it to enter and flow through. So if we were to talk about like pain and trauma, I'm resisting, I'm focused. Eventually it's impact hitting oak, crack, eventually it'll break. But if we have structure and fluidity and flexibility there, it's more like bamboo. It can take a barrage of impact and it absorbs without holding on to any of it. Okay, and the same thing happens somatically when we're practicing that. So we set structure the same way. We fix the eyes, we drop the breath, but then try to shift from a hard focus into more of a soft gaze. So when we work the attention on the finger, move it beyond the focal point into a soft gaze, and then start to enliven the senses. We don't want to push this into the category of mindfulness or into meditation. We just want to shift what we're taking in and letting pass through. So the structure allows us to engage, right? And have contact with whatever pressure is in front of us. But as soon as we drop the breath, release the shoulders, relax without giving up our structure, and now activate the ears and activate the skin. So as you breathe in, allow that sensation and pull to come into the body through the skin, listening, sensing, and then as you exhale, you release a little bit more. So it creates this oscillating vacuum. I'm pulling in, but I'm not holding. I'm pulling in, but I'm not holding. So with every breath, there's a little bit less tension. I'm maintaining my structure though. I'm still in contact. Pulling in, but then releasing on the exhale. Pulling in with the breath through the skin, listening, and then releasing more tension on the exhale. So I'm receiving, and just go for a few rounds of this. Receive everything from the environment, but hold on to nothing. Receive, breathe in, exhale, release. Don't attach. And just do a few cycles. Okay, we'll revisit that a couple of times. The core premise is this: when we meditate, we almost always meditate with eyes closed, which is, it's good in its own right, but it does that, it has the impact of opening up the senses and allowing us to experience, but that's not how we engage with life. The eyes are always open. We have to be attentive to how we're interacting relationally, not just personally. And so this is the mechanism now of taking the centering practice into a relational practice where we can remain in contact without attaching ourselves. And so it can be applied in conversation. It doesn't have to be a weirdo. Lindsay made a great video about eye gazing and the weirdos of coaching these days who just kind of like create a field of presence, but there's no human there. Right? I mean, the first rule of any of this is don't be a fucking weirdo. The second rule is you can still engage without holding on, right? And then that can start to speed up. And this is, you know, the heavier the trigger, the harder this becomes. But that's the process of metabolizing it in real time, not just in postscript. I had the thing, I had the memory, I had the trauma, now I need to do the work. This is in real time, how that has nothing to land on. Does that make sense? And so as we head in to Bohemian Rhapsody and similar concepts and principles, I think it's a great premise that we can still engage and enter if we've got this conscious awareness as a point of practice to be aware of the things in real time. And then not to distance ourselves, but how do we stay in full contact? But there's no hard line between you and the individual, and there's nothing that you need to protect. I think is a great question, and then it leads into the somatic shift of up here, warrior, into balance between warrior and asset in real time. Yeah, it's a bizarre thing when we don't operate that way 99.99999% of the time, but it's odd to think that the only way you can get hurt, especially if it's conversation, if there's no physical conflict, the only way that you get hurt is when you resist information. Doesn't mean you have to ignore it or deny it, right? And that's the challenge, is the warrior allows you to stay in contact without denial. And the asset gives you access of, well, maybe the shapeshifter too, but of non-attachment to sense fully without holding on. And I think it is a superpower to be able to have that. But if we were to look at where most of the pain and trauma and even PTSD, these things always occur from the breaking of the oak, right? Not from the impact that the bamboo takes.